My journey to tackle each of Pokemon's gyms continues with the Johto region. I'm not simply seeking badges, however, nor am I looking to pitch ways the gym battles themselves could be improved. My focus is on the structure of the individual facilities. How does a gym's layout challenge the player? How does it represent its type specialty? Pokemon may not be a series known for the complexity of its puzzles, but obstacles like these have still played a significant role in my development as a puzzle designer. A few months back, when I first started developing these Johto gym commentaries, I got on a kick of drafting alternative gym setups. Only a few showed up in the original shorts, but I knew a compilation like this one would be the perfect opportunity to revisit and refine those ideas. Enjoy! If you compare the gyms of Johto and Kanto, you'll find that there's no overlapping types. The Violet Gym, then, isn't chained to the Rock type like so many other starting gyms. Falkner is a Pidgey specialist, a flying type specialist, and let's just say, it took a while for his gym to get off the ground. The gym's original interior is defined by a weird S-shaped walkway. I can't be the only one that just sees a $sign when it comes up. It draws so much attention, actually, that years passed before I realized the dark spaces on the sides are likely meant to represent pits, not walls. The game plays the same thud as it would for any proper wall, though, which kind of dashes any air of danger. And that's not to say Game Boy Color games can't convey some sense of altitude. Just a stone's throw from the gym stands Sprout Tower, the first of 4 towers found around Johto. Ditch the Bellsprout theming, make it a multi-tiered roost, and you've got a gym fit for flying types. The graphical improvements of the remakes elevate the Violet Gym, figuratively and literally. The clockwork lift that launches players up to Falkner's new perch is one of my favorite features in any gym. That S is still there, but it's a lot more discreet. The see-through side paths are another great addition, further supporting the idea of a precarious, airy facility. The Violet Gym's concept was a good deal loftier than its predecessors, but without 3D graphics, I don't think it would have ever taken off. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. Plenty of work's already been done by other fans describing the links between Pokemon's regions and their real-world inspirations. One facet of those discussions that's key to Johto in particular is its emphasis on tradition. In keeping with that, I should probably address the Violet Gym's original, grounded form before delving further into my hypothetical merger. I said as much in my review, but if the intent of the original tile set was to be read as walls disappearing into pits, they fall a bit short. I tried breaking them up a bit more to resemble individual posts, in the hope that it'd help sell the illusion of elevated platforms. I also tried swapping the $sign structure for platforms modeled on a pair of wings like the gym's badge, but the one I liked most was this curving swoosh arrangement. In practice, it could be annoying to navigate with all these little turns, but I think it at least does a better job of evoking wind and flight than the original's angular, close-set design. Speaking of originality, one of the most common criticisms of Johto is its reliance on Pokemon from Kanto. By merging the Violet Gym with Sprout Tower, there's a chance to knock out two birds with one stone. Long before I started development on my Unova reviews, I admired the way Gen 5 integrated its gyms into their communities. My Johto notes, as a result, contain several tangents on the subject of what I'd call Unovification. My unified vision of the Violet Gym sees it perched at the top of a historic wooden tower from which bird Pokemon couriers have been dispatched, received, and tended to for generations. I present to you the Hoot Roost. A perfect spot for sprinkling in some lines about the bonds between humans and Pokemon, and one ripe for comparisons with the mobile phone players are given at the start of the game. Lucky players might even get a glimpse of some less common species as they ascend to the gym. Inheritance is already a prominent element of Falkner's character, so why not expand on that and make Falkner the newly invested master of the roost? Maybe he's been on a journey of his own and only recently returned to the nest to take on this new role. Tradition, after all, doesn't necessarily need to be embodied by an elderly character. Overall, I think Sprout Tower's aesthetic suits the gym better than the cooler colors of the original. Its antique quality would also make it a great place to start alluding to the region's legends. What would occupy the gym's original plot then? Leave your suggestions in the comments, I'd love to read them. I'll always have a fondness for the Johto region, and with a few minor tweaks, I think Violet City could have made for an even more effective spot from which to launch a new, thematically rich adventure. Azalea is the first gym in the series to undergo a complete metamorphosis for a remake, and the results make a great case study in the way Pokemon types can overlap thematically and how they can set themselves apart. Bugsy is, you guessed it, a bug-type specialist, but his original gym does little to show that off. Insectariums are a thing, of course, but without that context, grassy floors, planter boxes, and trees really suggest a grass-type gym. It's even cramped like this generation's take on Celadon. Similar to my idea of relocating Falkner's gym, I'd expect to find a character like Bugsy in the nearby Ilex Forest. If the challenge has got to be indoors though, at least the open circle arrangement could be swapped for something resembling the gym badge, or maybe a small maze like the tunnels in an ant farm. As long as we're talking about insects not represented on Bugsy's team, the focal point of the gym in Gen 4 are these adorable little spinnerack platforms. Spider buggies, if you will. Back when I designed escape rooms, my favorite development technique was word association, and I can imagine a similar process here. Okay, bugs, spiders, webs, walking across webs. Good, put a pin in that. What about riding across webs? These buggies aren't just novelties either. There's a logic they follow, changing lanes at every intersection along their northward or southward trek. The first section introduces the idea with 3 buggies, then the second iterates on it by adding levers that alter the buggy's route. It's a great little puzzle and distinctly bug type. Bugsy's team may not have changed much in the 10 years between games, but his gym's transformation is undeniable. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. With 18 total types to work with, there's bound to be a few with some mechanical and thematic overlaps. Rock and ground, for instance, would be grouped under a single category like Earth in most any other system, regardless of their density. Ghost and Dark seem to be distinguished mostly in terms of tangibility and intent, with Dark types often reading as a bit more malicious. Grass and Bug types both conjure images of fields and forests, but since plants are the more dominant feature in either space, transplanting greenery on its own into a gym's likely to bring the grass association and little else. I don't know if the spider buggies from the remakes could ever work on a Game Boy, but peppering the Azalea Gym with a few of the Gen 2 insectoid menu sprites would have done a lot to make it feel more like a place where bug Pokemon are studied. The ladybug layout I drew up came about from the badge design inspiration I considered when looking at the Violet Gym and combining it with the planter box motif Azalea's gym already shares with Goldenrod's. It's the ant farm maze design I like most though, because I thought incorporating non-static trainers would be a good way to make the place feel more lively, crawling with activity if you will. Gen 2 introduced spinners, which would be serviceable, but to really drive it home, I'd want to see trainers following set paths like we started seeing in Gen 3. That said, I still think setting the gym within Ilex Forest would be the most appropriate. At least being out conducting field research would have been a better explanation for Bugsy's absence from the events at Slowpoke Well, unless we're meant to believe this one rocket grunt was keeping everyone in the gym trapped. That's Unova Gym mentality creeping in though, I recognize that. As long as I'm talking about means of integrating gyms, I think a few lines about Bugsy and his Pokemon helping Kurt cultivate apricorns would do the trick. Ladybuzz and Spinneracks checking for ripeness, Scyther slicing the apricorns up, and Caterpies and Weedles hollowing them out. Sounds like a vignette right out of the anime. I used to find the distance between the Azalea Gym and Johto's bug catching contest strange, but in retrospect, it tracks that an entomologist like Bugsy would be drawn to a more wild locale than a carefully tended park. National Park may be a bit too plain to justify a full relocation. Normal types are the blank canvases of the Pokemon world. They can seem bland at first blush, but their wide move pools mean you can't always know what sort of coverage they'll roll out. Goldenrod City is the largest in Johto, as well as the home of its largest gym. Whitney makes good use of that space too, with dozens of planter boxes arranged in the shape of a remarkably demure Clefairy. White and pink's a color scheme well suited for a lot of early normal types, though the whole gym would likely be labeled a fairy gym if it debuted today. If its emphasis on cuteness wasn't enough to do it, consider the fact that half the Pokemon used here got reclassified as fairy types in Gen 6 anyway. That might not have been the case though if some old concept art's to be believed. It's enough for me that Whitney uses at least one Johto Pokemon, but the concept of a baseball buddy Apom's too clever for me to not wonder what a sportier Goldenrod might have been. It's not like sports don't exist in Pokemon, and Whitney's gym badge is already diamond-shaped. The remake's take on the gym doubles down on the cute angle, in addition to shifting the player's perspective a bit lower. The Clefairy layout's more noticeable as a result, highlighted further by its outline being incorporated as new raised platforms. Clefairy looks a bit distressed though in this version. To be fair, it is quite a mix of colors and patterns. Goldenrod proves that normal-type gyms don't need to be subdued to sell their specialty. Starting with an empty page just means more possibilities. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. Kanto's got a couple of sizable cities to its name, but the only real metropolis to be found in Johto is Goldenrod. That works out fine though, because if there was any character in Johto I could see attaining celebrity status, it'd be Whitney. Her gym's situated right by the radio tower after all. Maybe an NPC back in Violet City could mention a recent interview she did, perhaps about a particular pastime. Conceptually speaking, I've got no real issues with Whitney's gym as is. It's got some non-linearity, and the supersized pixel art piece was one of my favorite Pokemon fun facts growing up. I talked about co-opting the planter box maze idea for Bugsy's gym, and I wouldn't want to see the same premise 2 gyms in a row, which only fueled my development of Goldenrod Field. The updated premise is a simple one. Players looking to challenge Whitney would take to the field and battle a trainer at each of the bases in turn before approaching the pitcher's mound. And just to preserve some of that non-linearity from the original, I thought some security stationed at either end of the stands could serve as the initial barrier. And to think, all this spun out of a single piece of concept art. Not only does it have more of a Unova feel about it, placing a gym leader in a stadium like this feels like retroactive foreshadowing for Galar's whole league challenge. I don't even think it would throw things off if Whitney changed her specialty to fairy types. Clefairy's got plenty of mascot potential, and so does Granbull in this context. Questions remain though. What sort of teams might be seen in a stadium like this? And what sort of advertisers? I've got some ideas, but please, share your own in the comments. And while you're down there, consider subscribing and sharing the video if you haven't already. Ghost, Psychic, and Fairy types all have strong supernatural connections, but the Ecruteak Gym manages to tread the lines between them and distinguish Ghost as the spooky type. In its first incarnation, Morty's gym ranks among the simplest designs in Johto's lineup: a long room, a featureless black floor, and an honor guard of sages and mediums. Seems pretty straightforward, but first-time challengers are likely to find themselves warped back to the start after only a few steps. To reach the other side, players have to rely on those trainers to serve as guides, using their sightlines to point the way. It's simple once you catch on, but consider the limits of the player's top-down perspective. Move any one trainer too far from the one before them, and this mini-spiritual journey quickly becomes a shot in the dark. It's Morty, after all, that's the mystic seer of the future. The player's not expected to do the same. For its second incarnation, Ecruteak goes full spectral void and inverts the invisible floor concept. Instead of serving as stepping stones, the trainers carry candles that get extinguished when they're beaten. It's up to the player then to remember the path forward, and in one case, backwards. Players can be forgiven for not immediately catching on to the original puzzle, since the void only ever stays a void. In the remakes, however, a successful crossing's a matter of memory and coordination. The Ecruteak Gym presents two contrasting takes on the same sort of obstacle, yet neither loses sight of the spirit of the challenge. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. Earlier drafts of my Goldenrod review had me remarking on Whitney being the first gym leader to initially be encountered outside of their gym. And then I realized her appearance in the radio tower was only in the remakes, so I shifted the title to Morty and the Ecruteak script. Of course, then I remembered that Blue became a gym leader, and he had a whole game's worth of appearances before that. So, fine. Morty is, as far as I know, the first gym leader to be initially encountered outside of their gym that didn't debut as a rival, or a criminal, or some other non-gym leader. I just like when gym leaders are more than NPCs cooped up in the back of a building, and Morty's study of Johto's legends is certainly a step in the right direction, which leads me to the gym itself. Seeing as I didn't pitch an alternative layout for it in my original review, you'd be right to assume I didn't think it needed much in the way of improvement. Allow me then to pitch some obstacle variants that might have fit into gyms like these. Well, how about some options that'd suit the version from the remakes? The original's design is so compact and efficient that there's not much room to meaningfully iterate on the premise. To quote my original review, adding a new component would risk losing the spirit of the challenge. Maybe if this were a later gym with more space and more trainers to play around with, you could add some new wrinkle. But I think the Gen 2 design as is suits a 4th gym just fine. That's not to say the candles from Gen 4 are some inferior mechanic. In fact, they shed light on some great atmospheric possibilities. Specifically, there's a lot that could be done with trainers moving independently from the player. They could pace back and forth, they could travel in a loop, checking behind them at specific points to potentially catch a player tailing them too closely. They could even be patrolling disconnected walkways. Disconnected, but close enough for their light to reveal twists and turns in the player's path. And that's still only a glimpse. What else might be waiting in the dark? Who knows? Fighting types are most commonly associated with physical strength, and that's reflected in the number of specialists that dedicate themselves to training and honing their own bodies. Cianwood City is the home of one such specialist, and his gym demonstrates how that pursuit can lead to a whirl of frustration. The original gym is the second in the series to incorporate an HM into its design, but unlike Celadon, I have no issue describing the boulders in Chuck's gym as poorly implemented. You see, having been directed across the sea from Olivine, most players will make a point of challenging Chuck before heading back. Cianwood's the only real dead end in Johto after all, but after beating the first 2 trainers, players find themselves facing a literal and metaphorical wall, a trio of boulders that require a Pokemon with strength to move them. Where's the HM for strength? Why, back in Olivine, of course. Okay, why not use Fly to zip back to Olivine? Because you don't get that HM until after you beat Chuck. Better buy some repels, because you're surfing back the long way. Like him or hate him, at least the Celadon Gym couldn't be accessed without the necessary HM. Thankfully, the remakes ditched the boulders altogether. Gen 4 instead sees players navigating a series of ledges in order to shut off the waterfall Chuck's meditating under. It's a unique design, and best of all, self-contained. No special moves or items required. HMs wouldn't appear in any new gyms after Generation 2. And the Cianwood Gym demonstrates the strengths of removing them. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. The way I see it, the core of any remedy to Cianwood's boulder situation that doesn't involve ditching them entirely is the distance between said boulders and the HM needed to move them. To start, the boulders could be placed outside the gym itself. The fact that a first-timer likely wouldn't know about the boulders until they're halfway through is what really bugs me. Just block the entrance to begin with. Throw in a line about Chuck wanting to test a trainer's strength first to see if they're worth his time. Taking things a step further, the NPC that gives players the HM for strength could be moved from Olivine to Cianwood. Maybe they could be found along the beach to the north. There's already some breakable rocks up that way, and they could have a line about some rocks being too sturdy to simply be smashed. Further still, we could see a blend of elements from the Gen 2 original and the Gen 4 update. There's still plenty of thematic value in a fighting gym with strength boulder puzzles after all, but I think it'd be a lot more tolerable if the boulders were a natural part of the environment. The same goes for the waterfall meditation. Move the challenge out of the physical gym then. I know the routes west of Cianwood didn't exist in the original games, but the caves and waterfalls along Route 47 strike me as an ideal place for Chuck to take his pupils for some wilderness training. If Olivine can effectively move the gym trainer portion of the challenge to a different location, I don't see why the same couldn't be done for the gym leader themselves. Really, any reason to listen to those new route themes is fine by me. The Olivine Gym stands out as the first in the series to feature a newly introduced type, but where it really breaks the mold lies in the way it shakes up the structure of a typical gym challenge. Jasmine's specialty is steel, but according to one of the trainers you face on the way to meet her, she used to train rock types, which is reflected in the boulders that frame her original gym. Of course, any mention of steel as newly discovered is absent in the remakes, leaving the Gen 2 gym as a snapshot of a younger series. I won't dwell on their aesthetic differences because I don't consider either of them to be anything more than the site of the gym leader battle. The gym's true obstacles lie further south. Players first meet Jasmine at the top of Olivine's lighthouse. Reaching her is not as simple as an elevator ride, though. The lighthouse is a 6-level tower that sees players winding their way up, battling trainers, and dropping between floors to get to the top. In the lantern room, you meet the sick Pokemon Jasmine's tending to, and you're asked to travel to Cianwood for some special medicine. Only after it's administered will Jasmine return to the gym. But unlike other pre-gym tasks, there's no additional trial to face before battling her. The lighthouse, functionally speaking, is the gym. Simple as these gym facilities may be, challenging Jasmine comes with a quest line and a mini-dungeon to boot. It's a refreshing take on the gym formula and develops the idea of gym leaders as more than just boss fights. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. Although we'll likely never know what Jasmine's team looked like before it got upgraded to use steel types, I think it's obvious that it was an improvement. I don't imagine an Onyx would have done very well in a town where trainers can easily fish up Tentacruels with levels in the mid-20s. Type matchups aside, the choice to rearrange the structure of the Olivine Gym Challenge means we wouldn't see a proper steel-themed gym until Generation 4. There, of course, we've got Byron's elevators and even Faulkner's giant gears, but anything on that scale would have been a no-go in classic Johto. Perhaps Olivine could have featured a set of retractable metal walkways controlled by different colored switches, akin to those seen in Zelda games of that era. A puzzle very much in the Zelda mold actually appeared in Generation 3, in fact, just not in a gym. Those puzzles are a matter for a separate essay, though. In the meantime, build these walkways out over the existing rock garden and you've got a steel gym. Speaking of construction, there's potential to build an even stronger link between Jasmine and the Olivine Lighthouse. Maybe her family and their rock types quarried the stone used to construct it to begin with. That idea is what led me to draw up a maze with seemingly unconnected stretches that are in fact linked by onyx tunnels. Nothing fancy, and maybe a bit tired as a theme nowadays with two families already tied to mining, but Jasmine predates them all, so I think it would work fine. Pokemon has a strange obsession with saving all things Ice-type to the late game. Mahogany is actually the earliest accessible Ice Gym in the series so far, with options to challenge Price for your 5th, 6th, or 7th badge. Price's gym sees the introduction of ice tiles as a puzzle mechanic, one which I quite like, hot take though that may be. Like the spider buggies back in Azalea, ice sliding puzzles challenge players to reconsider the way they navigate an area, which I always find interesting. They can certainly get out of hand, but both of Mahogany's setups are solid. The original gym may seem messy, but it's compact. Additional walls serve to focus your attention on the center strip. There's plenty of non-ice tiles, which means you're not just blindly sliding across dull expanses. And unlike a lot of similar puzzles, the gym offers multiple starting points, each of which can be used to thread a way to Price. The remake split the gym into 3 bite-sized challenges and add a new mechanic into the mix. Each room has a pair of sliding ice blocks that, when pushed together, freeze in place, creating a new fixture to stop your slide and launch off from. The second room is the only one you may need to leave and reset, and the third one actually has 2 valid solutions. The mixed reception ice puzzles get, I think, is a result of that tendency to withhold the ice type. These obstacles aren't so challenging that they couldn't be found in a 4th or even 3rd gym, they just show up so late. If players were allowed to warm up to these sorts of puzzles, imagine what sort of obstacles the late game could offer instead. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. Having reviewed 4 ice puzzle gyms in the last few months, I'd say Mahogany's are my favorites. My reasoning could best be summed up by returning to my comment about the compact design of the original gym. Scale and density proved to be a recurring theme when discussing its successors, which may itself stem from my escape room design experience. Because the games I developed were played under time limits, an aspect of their design that I tended to isolate was what I came to refer to as reset time, the time it takes for players to recognize a solution isn't working and to circle back and try again. Imagine a puzzle has you watching a blinking light and counting the number of pulses to work out a 3-digit code. Its reset time would cover the time needed to watch the full sequence, the time needed to attempt the solution, and however long you'd have to wait until the sequence starts again. In the case of Pokemon's ice puzzles, the reset time covers the time spent sliding, the time taken to assess your new position, and the time spent getting into a more advantageous position. That time spent sliding is key, because the further you go, the longer it takes to come back. An incorrect input can often be solved by just turning around, but sprinkle in elements like Snowpoint's ramps or Icarus's quarter pipes, and a slip on the D-pad could require 3, 4, or even more additional inputs just to get back into position. Mahogany's gyms have the shortest reset times among the ice gyms because they're the most compact. The longest stretch of ice I could find in Gen 2's gym was 9 tiles long. Snowpoint's second tier, by comparison, is 15 tiles by 15. I could go on, but I see now that I'm looking at a subject worthy of its own analysis. In terms of location, I don't have much to say about the Mahogany Gym other than I wish its surroundings were a bit more wintry. Some snow patches scattered around town and along the adjacent routes would be nice, and in lieu of a more substantial redesign, please enjoy this rendering of Gen 4's gym in the style of Gen 2. The Dragon type's association with myth and legends make it a natural choice for a late game boss. However, they're more commonly wielded by Elite 4 members than gym leaders, and the Blackthorn Gym stands as an example why that might be for the better. The site of Johto's final gym battle represents dragons in broad strokes. Dragons have the strongest fantasy flavor of any type apart from fairy, so it suits a dragon master to have a lair that resembles something out of a D&D game. Dragon folklore comes in many varieties though. Lava pits line up with the image of dragons as breathing fire, but Claire's gym teams have always had more of an aquatic theme. Likewise, the adjacent Dragon's Den doesn't sit within a volcano, but on the far side of a subterranean lake. I guess Johto wraps up the same way it began, with gyms set up next to sites far better suited to their specialties. None of this is to say Blackthorn's designs are bad. They're serviceable, just poorly matched. The original deserves some credit for its 2-story setup, which certainly makes better use of strength boulders than Cianwood did. The platforms used in the remakes to worm your way through the gym also offer a unique navigation challenge, even if it's dragged down a bit by the same starting and stopping that plagues strength boulder puzzles. The dragon pattern in the lava is also a nice touch. The Blackthorn Gym is an adequate but generic dragon gym, and unfortunately for Claire, it doesn't do much to keep its leader from being overshadowed by other dragon trainers. Subscribe for more shorts, comment your thoughts, and check out the channel for more game and puzzle design content. The other dragon trainer at the front of my mind when I first reviewed Blackthorn was, of course, Lance. His character design looks a bit more at home in a lava-filled gym than Claire's does, but it was writing about Opalucid that really got me excited to take a crack at redesigning the series' original dragon gym. Apart from Lance's Charizard, neither of Johto's dragon bosses have a strong association with fire. Claire wields water dragons, and Lance specializes in airborne beasts, so the lava would be the first thing to go. I've addressed ways of conveying flight and its limitations elsewhere, so I think it'd be more interesting to lean into Blackthorn's existing aquatic elements. You don't have to dig very deep into Pokemon's creature designs before you encounter Magikarp, Gyarados, and the Legend of the Dragon Gate. Seeing as the Johto games already send players down into the Dragon's Den to secure their 8th badge, why not make the den the site of the gym battle, and situate it at the base of a massive subterranean waterfall? Challengers looking to battle Claire would have to brave a treacherous path running parallel to the waterfall. Her badge, the Rising Badge, unlocks the use of waterfall outside of battle, which would then enable players to finish their Blackthorn challenge and the Johto Gym challenge as a whole by ascending the waterfall themselves. A rite of passage that marks them as worthy of a shot at the Pokemon League and the title of champion held by Johto's top dragon trainer. There's something so satisfying about pitching an updated slate of gyms that starts with one being elevated to the top of a tower and ends with one sunk into the depths of a mountain. And to think, both sites were already there on the game's critical path. There was a time where I might have seen that potential and let it tarnish my opinion of the Johto games. Nowadays, I can only see it as an opportunity to speculate and engage with the games further. Plus, it gave me a great reason to whip up some more Game Boy inspired maps, which is something I've desperately missed doing for this series. Speaking of maps, I'm quite proud of the maps I drew for my Unova Gym reviews, so consider checking those out if you haven't already. Maps are also a major part of my Dungeon Diaries series, where I talk about designing puzzles and the settings around them for my Zelda-inspired Dungeons & Dragons game. If you want to see more game and puzzle design analysis like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, sharing my work, and leaving comments like so many wonderful people already have. Thanks for watching.